Well, the causes of ecological crisis today, for those coming from radical political economy, Marxist and non-Marxist, is directly traceable to the nature of capitalism, nature of capitalist accumulation, taking nature, mining nature for capitalist accumulation. So the origin of the ecological crisis is important to consider. The cycles of capitalist crisis of overaccumulation has always been handled by the big owners of capital, partly by tapping into nature. So, the idea of endless capitalist accumulation by going into frontier making, endless frontier making, by going into mining nature. That again, it creates even more ecological crisis. So anyone who would be who would frame struggles within and against capitalism by looking at the logic of capital, its crisis, and its ability to deal with crisis by passing on the crisis, either passing on to other societies or engaging more in mining of nature, should take ecological issues seriously in that context. There's a lot of discussion about north-south differences in handling ecological issues, including the climate crisis, and some of those are valid. The whole idea of ecological debt, for instance, of capitalist centers of accumulation that generally cost much more of our ecological crisis today, with low-income, medium-income countries who are in the south that contributed less in that. And that's a very important and very valid issue, more generally, in terms of trying to put into proper, appropriate international perspective, in international political economy, the ecological crisis today. However, this debate about the North, yes, many of the advocacy for ecological issues, including approaches to degrowth as a way to handle ecological crisis today, is very much concentrated in the North. Both Marxist left and non-Marxist radical left, and less in developing South, global South. For instance, the idea that to go into degrowth among agrarian societies in which the problem is really very low level of productivity. But then the main challenge is actually how to improve. And the saying now that you cannot use fossil-based way of producing creates a lot of tension, or at least that kind of advocacy doesn't gain much traction in some of the movements. But it doesn't mean that left in the South are actually not receptive to that. I think there's an increasing realization that ecological crisis is at the very heart of capitalist logic of idea of endless economic growth and the limits to that kind of logic. Metabolic rift, or others like J.B. Foster would call it ecological rift, is the idea that in capitalist production, circulation, consumption, and waste, in terms of food system, for instance, the more industrial the food system must become, the greater the rift between the site of production and the site of consumption and waste. When you used to produce agricultural or food stuff, you use soil fertility for that, but that if you transport it elsewhere and consume it elsewhere, the ability to replenish the fertility in a natural kind of way is broken. And Marx first identified that and on that issue. And so capitalism was able to deal with that problem by mobilizing, of course, in the beginning of capitalist agriculture, by mobilizing more animal manure, raiding later some bones, including human bones, to fertilize agriculture. And then the most important way before the modern era, for the contemporary era of resolving that problem, was during the guano rush. So the discovery of bird poop out there, especially in the Peruvian coast, from the 1820s onwards, which went on to nearly 100 years of guano rush, basically postponed the huge crisis in industrial agriculture and enabled industrial agriculture in Europe and elsewhere to be able to continue on or even expand. And then, of course, that one has been relatively depleted for many different reasons, but also the discovery of more synthetic fertilizer again brought in a very different kind of ways on handling the rift. But it's just a matter of time that the current way of fossil-based synthetic fertilizer will run again into trouble, because it also leads into ecological crisis of soil fertility in the end. So it's the rift which has a big special kind of dimension. You clear-cut forest in the Amazon to produce soya. You export soya to the Netherlands to feed the cows, to produce meat and dairy. And the Dutch export dairy and meat to China and consume in China, and waste stay there. So it's that kind of thing. And then we know many other things of blueberry from Peru consumed in Beijing or in the Netherlands, that kind of distance. So food sovereignty, the main, at the heart and soul of food sovereignty, the first two lines of definition of food sovereignty is the right of peoples to produce, circulate, and consume food in and near its territory. In and near their territory. That in itself is a radical kind of inversion of the distancing in metabolic rift. So that's a very important counter to metabolic rift. Now it was later more developed into in technological terms through the development of agroecology, which is more often it's misunderstood as a restorative approach of going back to the past, of recovering indigenous way of production, which has a very low level of production, but it doesn't harm the ecology, but it also has a very low level of productive forces. But agroecology is never like that. Agroecology is an attempt to be based on, yes, long-standing practices that are in harmony with nature, but with the ever with the constant attempt at developing the productive forces. Ecology doesn't say no machines, but machines and mechanization, for instance, is not inherently good or bad. It's about what kinds of mechanization, under what conditions mechanization is being done. And we've seen a lot of many agroecologically ways of producing that uses machines and others with more kind also high level of productivity. But agroecology is relatively closed loop system also, of which you produce, circulate and consume, and then plow back waste within a reasonable kind of territory in that sense. So that's why the idea there is less of a plot-based farm plots here and there kind of idea, but the notion of territory, agroecological territories is more agroecological landscape is more what makes sense rather than agroecological farm plot. It doesn't make much sense. You need a scale at the very least for that to make that closed loop. So it's an attempt. So in the end, food sovereignty is inherently anti-capitalist. And a very radical way of looking at that. It's way beyond the food. It's some critics of food sovereignty say that it's about just food, but it's not just about food. It's food and capitalism, and an alternative so different from what we have today. There are different ways of interpreting food sovereignty. Some are doing plot-based kind of here and there things, but stepping back and looking at the bigger and longer perspective, food sovereignty is deeply radical in a way, because it gets into the very problem of ecological rift or metabolic rift, and looks at a possible kind of alternative beyond capitalism. Working on model, concept of a model of looking at models, and it often creates a lot of problem of importing ideas or practices that don't really make much sense in the concrete conditions of particular other societies. Some fascinating agrarian and food movements, social movements today in Latin America or in South Asia may have gained momentum in those societies, but the ways in which those were constructed and the ways in which and the reasons how they gained momentum may have very different objective conditions than in the Arab region, for example. It doesn't mean we should not look at and analyze how they emerged, why, under what conditions, how did some societies with very repressive regimes actually gave birth to very strong social movements, while some societies that are not very repressive and even encouraging to social movements, but produced very weak social movements or almost absent. So it's very difficult to generalize patterns of like predetermined stories of variables A, B, and C will result in 1, 2, and 3. In the end, it's all about using theoretical and conceptual learnings and political learnings from others, and see which ones of those are relevant in terms of figuring out, to help us figure out particular conditions in particular societies. But there is one thing I think that is crucial. In places where social movements are weak or absent, struggles for more significant concessions for the working class are very weak, and concessions, reforms that do matter are you almost don't see them, gained by the working class. So social movements different from some armed revolutionary groups or political parties left or progressive political parties, NGOs, and other the proliferation of localized and sectoral advocacy groups, whether anti-mining campaigns or ecological advocacy organizations. They are very important, but a local campaign is a local campaign. A sectoral is sectoral. As Nancy Fraser would say, they're merely environmental, as she was criticizing environmental justice struggles. She was not meaning to devalue environmental justice struggles, but she was just pointing out a truth that local struggle is local struggles, sectoral struggle is sectoral struggles.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. They are important, but if you are looking at system change or economic concessions across the board for the working class, then that is very far from a social force that could bring you into that, or could even make any significant dent in terms of recasting the correlation of forces for or against reforms. And we are talking here only even of reforms. So here the role of class-conscious but pluralist social movements that are grounded but has clear ideological moorings, clear ideological reference point at the heart of its class is very crucial. I think there are many fascinating social justice, different types of social justice movements today, sectoral or otherwise thematic advocacy, but you miss the class consciousness, the class analysis, the class politics in it, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand of how can you have a sense of a strong social justice, the justice, without a class content in it. The reference point becomes vague, and I think class consciousness has to be there, but without class and class politics we don't go anywhere in our struggle. But with class analysis and class politics only, or class purism, we don't go very far either. Today in the left discourse is more developed class and interlocking social axis of difference, feminism, gender, race and ethnicity, generation and religion and others as a key. That one, the left is still trying to grapple with that. Race and class. The left in many societies still have a lot to do, a lot of improvement in that. Race and feminism, class and feminism, class and gender. The left has been one of the pioneers in doing that. Truth be said, in that intersection of class and gender. But in others, class and ethnicity, class and caste, class and race. That one still has to come in. Now, that brings us to your first question of ecological struggles, because now one extreme point of view is that ecological issues and climate crisis affects everyone. So we are all in this together. No, it affects everyone, but not in similar ways. the nature of how we are all impacted is not similar, and there is a very clear class character of the way we are all impacted by environmental crisis or climate crisis. There, the left has a lot to offer to deepen and sharpen ecological struggles. As long as the left is able to grapple with much of the ecological issues. The green ecological issue needs a lot of fine-tuning. The last few months saw many of the green parties in Europe. The other today, I think Ireland, from 12 seats in the parliament of the Green Party to 1. But it's part of the discussion of class and ecological issues, the one where you open the question here. And there's a lot of things to think about. And in the many contradictions, difficult dilemmas, the call of working class to open coal mines for jobs, but then the very strong environmental campaigns to shut down coal mines, for instance. So where would any left party stand in that, for one? So those are not easy dilemmas and questions and contradictions, and I have no easy answer for that either. But those are some of the conversations where I think discussions should come in. Just to return on your food sovereignty, in 2025, next year, there would be a World Assembly of all militants in food sovereignty worldwide, and this would be a huge gathering that will be done in India. And the main umbrella theme is food sovereignty and system change. And that is something, and I think that is truly an important kind of theme. But I could only guess that part of that framing of the topic, of the theme, is a realization that it might be that food sovereignty is not always interpreted as food sovereignty in the context of a system change. Maybe it could be interpreted in less than that, like food sovereignty projects here and there, small scale thing there, merely food, as Nancy Fraser would say, merely environmental. So my reading is that it's an attempt by the leadership, by the core collective energy in food sovereignty global movement to make sure that it doesn't get stuck in merely food or merely agrarian, but is able to speak to system change issues.